Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Okay. My name is Dorian Chung. I'm Deputy Director and Chief Curator here at M+. I'm delighted to have you all join us this afternoon for the second lecture in the Lars Nitva Keynote Lecture Series. The series is named after M+'s inaugural director, Dr. Lars Nitva, and invites renowned artists, scholars, and thinkers to share their insights on broader cultural ideas and urgent topics of our time. The lecture series is generously sponsored by the Robert H. N. Ho Family Foundation in Hong Kong, for which we are deeply grateful. We are proud to feature Beeple for today's keynote lecture. Beeple is the professional moniker of Michael Winkelmann, a leading digital artist and designer who has been active over the past 20 years. His rapid rise in public prominence in recent years helped to highlight the growing influence of digitally generated art in parallel with the explosive growth in interest in non-fungible tokens. Diverse in style, Beeple's work often incorporates references to pop culture, science fiction, and politics, often with a sardonic edge. Central to his artistic practice is his Everydays project, for which he uploads images daily to his website and social media accounts for public sharing as well as for critique, while learning a new technical skill every year. Yesterday, we opened to the public our presentation of Beeple's Human One, a groundbreaking work marrying a generative digital moving image and a kinetic sculpture. Already an iconic 21st century work, Human One is now on view in the museum's Focus Gallery on the second floor until 30th April 2023. This presentation is the Asia premiere and only the second museum presentation in the world. For those of you who haven't seen the work in the flesh yet, we invite you to do so following this lecture or anytime during its almost 5-month-long run. It's a kind of work that you will want to visit again and again, not the least because Beeple intends to change the background image of the work in the course of the exhibition period. Today, we're honored to welcome Beeple to give us a chance to hear about how he has developed his artistic practice and to share his views on the future of the internet, the metaverse, and the growing influence of digitally generated art. Before we start, I would like to thank the M+ team, including our exhibition manager, registrar, and installation crew, and of course the curator in charge, Sunny Jung, who so ably made the presentation of Human One possible. I also thank the members of the M+ Learning and Interpretation team for organizing this lecture. And finally, I thank all of you in the audience today for being here on a gorgeous Saturday afternoon to spend time with us and with Beeple. Now, I would like to welcome to the stage Beeple with Sunny Jung. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Hey. Is this on? And there, is it on?
I don't think mine's on. No, it is on.
Hey, how we doing, everybody? Good. Thank you guys for coming out, and thank you so much to M+ for having me here. It's been such an amazing experience. Thank you to Dorian. Thank you to Sunny. It's been a great experience and something that I think is really such a great moment for digital art to sort of show people that this is something more than monkey JPEGs. So I've got one of the things that a lot of people are not sort of aware of is that I've been at this for quite a while. I'm 41 and I started making digital art in college. And so throughout that time, I've done a lot of different types of digital art. And so I wanted to talk about some of the different projects that I've done throughout that time. And so we'll do that.
Yeah, get the presentation.
Okay, I've got this clicker here. Is it clicking? There it is. Okay. Is it? Oh, yeah. Sorry. So yeah, my name is Mike Winkleman. I live in South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina now, where our studio is. This is kind of a sort of Wikipedia entry. We'll just dive right into it. So the first thing I started when I got to college, I went to school for computer science, and I wanted to make video games. And I'd always been sort of very into computers, and very, from the time we got a computer when I was in 5th grade, I was always very interested in what you could do with this. And so when I got to college, I started making little weird experimental sort of like videos on my computer and a bunch of short films with my friends. And the short films were very narrative. They had no budget. They were not good, if I'm being honest.
Can we still see these online anywhere?
They're not online anymore, I would say, but they are at the gallery that we're opening. But what kind of I learned from that is I didn't like working with actors, and I didn't like shooting things in the real world because I didn't have control. People would be sick or be raining or blah, blah, blah. And I really did not like that. I really liked having sort of like complete control. And that's what the computer sort of like offered me. So I stopped making work like that and really sort of like focused on just doing things on the computer where I could, sort of didn't need to rely on anybody else as well. And so let me go back here. So yeah, this was like 1999 to like 2003 that I did this. In 2003 is when I started releasing work under the name Beeple. And so the first things that I did actually were some electronic music albums that were very, very, very bad. And I started working on sort of these instrumental videos, which we'll get to in a sec. Around this time, I also started a collective with a couple of my friends, and these are guys that I've known since like kindergarten, and they were the only people in our small town in rural Wisconsin that were interested in this sort of weird new type of art and music, electronic music, and so we had a collective where we made a bunch of different stuff, and it was really focused on sort of like improvisation and just different sort of like processes for making art. And there was always a huge emphasis on process. We would make up sort of like rules for how we would, pass work back and forth to each other, and it was very much a super experimental.
It's just did you mention if the collective ever grew at all? Wasn't there a kind of like remix?
We did, yeah. There was a bunch of people who we sort of like collaborated with, and we actually did a number of things with the Milwaukee Art Museum in Wisconsin there. But it was the core members was just sort of Jason, Kyle, and I, who I still work with today. And so here's some of the work. This was.
Can you tell us a little bit about the left-hand side?
Sure. So that is actually me, and I rotoscoped myself, like sitting on like a bouncing chair, and there was like riding these like weird bouncing things around. It was.
It doesn't know what rotoscoping is. It's essentially tracing over video images, right?
It is a very, very time-consuming process where you just trace things manually, frame by frame. I think that was actually traced in Flash. So the sort of first kind of bigger sort of like project that I did, or first sort of like work. The first work that I did was under the name Beeple was the instrumental videos. And I had read a paper by Steve Reich called Music as a Gradual Process. And I thought it was really interesting how he kind of laid out a sort of like framework for a type of work. And so I wrote a paper about instrumental videos, as I called them, where basically instead of looking at the overall kind of like emotion of a song and trying to represent it that way, I thought it would be interesting to take each individual element of the music and represent that, and then have a combination of those. And so the combination of all of the notes of the music would match all of the visuals that you have. And so with these videos, I was the one doing the music as well, because I would basically make short little snippets of audio and visuals, and then I would mix a bunch of those together in a editing program. And so as I made the audio, the video would sort of correspond to it.
Is this a period when you maybe started? Actually, I don't know this, but your commercial, like a kind of commercial practice, as in because you were making, or was this still purely a kind of thing that you did as an artwork essentially, or just learning?
Yeah. So at this time, after college, I finished college, and I sort of figured I could just get a job doing anything and then just make my own art, and that's what I really truly love doing. And so I got a job doing web design in Wisconsin, and so during this time, that's what I was doing for a job. I wasn't doing any sort of like freelance work. These were just purely things that I really wanted to make, and they really didn't have that much of an audience, but it was just something that I thought was super interesting and something I'd never seen before. And so there's a few of those. I made a total of 11 of those between 2003 and 2015, and they really sort of track the progress of my technical abilities on the computer as well. The first ones are very sort of rudimentary, and then by the end, they're like fully 3D and pretty complex. And so that was that tight syncing of audio and video. That was something that was a huge focus throughout those years.
Was this when you also did Kill Your Coworkers? Because
So-
I think that got you pretty big, actually.
The Kill Your Coworkers was actually a music video for Flying Lotus, electronic music artist. And I think that was like 2010, 2011, around there. But that was more like a sort of like normal music video, and that it didn't have this like super tight audio and video sync. What do we have? So this is a still from 0 Day, which was the final piece. And all of these sort of like machines are kind of buzzing and whirring, and the camera's flying through, and every single instrument in the music is represented through the visuals there. During this time, I was also making some short films, and most of these short films dealt with different sort of political or sort of like societal issues. One of these was subprime, which was about the subprime mortgage crisis. Then there was another one, Transparent Machines, which was about sort of online privacy, and that was in 2010, I believe, or 2013 actually. And it's funny because it's really, if you watch it now, it seems like something that you could have made, yesterday. It's very let's just say not much has changed during that time to make things better. But these were something that was different than the everydays, and something that I would work on for usually a year or two to make these short films. And so it kind of gave me another sort of like outlet where I wasn't like, having to work at this like super quick pace, and I could kind of like take my time and really sort of experiment a bit more with things that take more than one day to do.
Actually, that I think we forgot to mention that at the beginning. Actually, that you actually learned a new skill, essentially, right? So during this time, 2000, like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, you were dedicating yourself to learning like Cinema 4D or like a kind of drawing skill. Maybe do you want to actually mention that?
On the everydays, I think that kind of goes over that a little bit more. So the VJ clips were another project that I did for a number of years, And so what these were short little snippets of video that were abstract. They're usually about 15 to 30 seconds, and a lot of them loop. And so they were released under Creative Commons and were intended for concert visuals or really anything that people wanted to use them for. People didn't need to credit me; they could just use them. And so those became very, very popular. And that started bringing me a bunch of like freelance work for people who wanted more like custom concert visuals. And so that was another outlet that I would say these took about a week to do. And so it was another way to something different than the everydays that, have a very fast pace that you have to work with. And so there's about 280 of these, and they're still online, and they're still being downloaded quite a bit. And so if you've been to a electronic music festival or concert in the last 10, 11 years, there's probably a decent chance that you've seen these. And see, here's some more examples of the VJ clips.
And you actually encountered your own clips the first time you came to Asia, right?
I did. So this is the second trip I've made to Hong Kong, and we went on a family vacation in 2011. And when we were here, we decided to go to Macau and wanted to go out to a nightclub. And so we went to the Hard Rock Macau. And when we got there, the clips were playing on the front of they were being projected on the front of the nightclub. And it was like, oh my God, there's the clips. There's my stuff. Because it was like, again, like I didn't know if people were using them. I'd only been releasing them, a year prior to that. And so it was just kind of throwing them out there into the void. And it was like, well, I hope people are using these or find these useful. I didn't really know. And it was always in the back of my head. It's like, man, it would be cool if I was like at a concert one day and like, then they played one of my clips. Like that would be so cool. And so it was like, a year later, and I'm thinking this is like 20 years down the line or whatever. And then a year later, I saw one and it's like, what are the chances of like that? Like, this is like, must be like such a like crazy coincidence to be on the other side of the world and see like somebody using this. And then once I got back to the States, I went to a few concerts and I realized that was not that much of a coincidence. They were already being used a huge amount.
Just like everywhere, basically.
They were everywhere. And to the point where they kind of became sort of like not cool in the like concert visual industry, that it's like almost like cheating, that it's like, oh, you're just using the Beeple clips. Anybody can do that. And I think that like a bunch of the like VJ software started like releasing them and like including them with their software. So yeah, those got a couple use.
And then so you never got credit for them essentially, but people just recognize them from the style, right? So you kind of got fame through a kind of aesthetic somehow.
Yeah, I think some people recognize them, but I think a lot of people don't even potentially know where they came from, or like they just kind of, because they're on a bunch of sites now.
But were there lots of other people doing it at the time?
Doing that?
And releasing them for free.
Nobody was doing that. Everybody was trying to sell VJ clips. So nobody was giving them away like this. So that's another reason they became very popular, because it wasn't like, oh, there's a bunch of people giving away this like free content. And yeah. So the everydays, this is obviously kind of the work that I'm sort of most known for. And so this was a project that I started in 2007. I wanted to get better at drawing. And so I saw a illustrator in the UK named Tom Judd, who did a sketch a day. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like I could see the sort of like progress that he did. And I thought I wanted to get better at drawing at the time too. And so I thought that would be a good way to sort of like stick with it. And so I did, drawing a day and posted it online. And then at the end of that year, I had gotten a lot better at drawing. I'm still very, very bad, but I had improved a lot and really a bunch of new techniques and just things. I saw a huge sort of improvement during that time, much quicker than sort of like previous years. And so I'd always wanted to learn a 3D program, a 3D application that like rendering. And I didn't know any of those. I'd never used one before. And I thought, what if I use this same sort of like technique to do a picture a day, a render a day, and teach myself these 3D programs. And so after the first year of drawing, then I immediately started doing that with Cinema 4D. And now here we are.
I mean, maybe talk a little bit about that as well, in terms of maybe the digital art community, because you're talking about you giving away these free clips, right? And that kind of gets used is visible by this certain community. But also, I remember growing up actually, and also actually learning Cinema 4D and looking at, because nobody really, I guess you didn't pay for all this kind of like training stuff, but there's so much available on the internet that you could kind of teach yourself, or you felt like you could teach yourself, right? So I take it you didn't pay or undergo any kind of professional training, but you kind of learned your skill set from the community. And then I presume as you discovered new techniques, maybe you didn't, or maybe you did, but others would put out new tutorials mimicking that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely, that was another reason for giving away the VJ clips for free, is because I'd learned so much from people putting out tutorials. And I also, with the VJ clips and with a lot of the short films, I would also give away the project files that I used to make them. And to me, this seemed like, again, coming from like a computer science background, it was more of like an open source thing. And it seemed like very obvious to me to like give this away, and people didn't really get, why are you giving those project files away? Those are like your secrets of how you did it. And it's like, yeah, but I already did it. I'm not going to do it again. And so if somebody else can learn from that, like, that's great. Like, that's amazing. And so that was another thing that sort of like brought attention. And so like all of these projects are sort of what brought me, sort of building a following over the last 20 years. And that's kind of what sort of made the Crazy Everyday sale possible, is because I had sort of like built up these following through all these different types of projects. And so here's some examples of the everydays. The style has really sort of like changed a lot over the years. The first ones obviously were drawing. And then there's also been a number of different mediums that I've done during that time to try and learn different techniques. One year was I did Adobe Illustrator. I didn't know how to do any sort of like vector work. One year was photography. I didn't know how to use like a digital SLR with ISO and aperture and all these things. But most of it has been Cinema 4D. That's very much been the sort of like backbone of my like practice. And so the first Cinema 4D pieces were very sort of like basic, because it was much more about learning something new than sort of the like final output. The actual picture was just sort of like a byproduct of what I learned that day.
So maybe going through a tutorial again and just kind of mimicking that.
100%, yeah. Like trying to like learn all these things, because these programs are very, very complicated, and they have a lot of different things that you can do. And when you see movies or video games, they have a lot of different, people are working on highly specialized pieces of this. There's one person who makes the 3D model. There's one person who decides what they're going to model, does like concept work. Then there's another person who takes and puts the like materials and sort of like textures on the 3D model. Then there's another person that animates it. Then there's another person that lights it. Then there's another person that takes and composites all this stuff. And so it's very sort of like specialized. And so I wanted to learn a little bit of each of those sort of like pieces of this. And so it was, to be able to do everything myself. And so the first everydays were very much just about that kind of like learning. And then from there, they became much more sort of abstract, and very much about sort of like color and composition and form and not really sort of anything like they look now.
That thing on the right is super weird looking.
Yeah, it's like some weird like balls like in this like skin type thing, skin sacks of balls. I don't know where I'm pressing this. It's not going. There we go. So really just trying to like explore a bunch of different styles during this time. And at this time too, I was not using any sort of like 3D models that I did not make. And so I wanted to learn how to model. And so I would have to make everything completely from scratch during that time. After I hit 10 years of everydays, I sort of took that restriction off of myself because I was starting to want to make more narrative work. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to use any model from anything. I'll buy a model from Turbo Squid. I'll, get a model from whatever, because I was interested in trying to tell a story with this. And so if I wanted, to put a tree in the scene, prior to that, I would have to model a tree. And which some of these assets, I mean, you could spend a month making them to make a good car or a house or whatever. And so I didn't want to do that. I just wanted a tree in the picture.
Yeah, because you already knew how to do it. But you've almost like described in some ways this kind of this traditional notion of, say, being a painter in the past. I don't know, doing kind of Mannerist paintings or something in a workshop where you're this kind of journeyman who learns from a master how to, copy things from books initially, copy from paintings maybe, and then progressing to doing black and white charcoal drawings from a life cast, and then being able to use color, and then finally, after many, many years, being able to add narrative. So you kind of see all these like biblical stories or something like that. So it feels like kind of like that, but in a digital form.
Yeah, it definitely is. The sort of like focus has changed, and it's changed also with like technology as well. That's been a huge sort of like factor. The type of work that I do now would absolutely not be possible 20 years ago. Rendering technology has improved an insane amount during that time. The amount of assets available online has drastically sort of like changed. And so as that's evolved, my practice has evolved too. But I do feel like it is very sort of like painterly in that all of these images that you see here, it wasn't like generated by the computer. It wasn't like I wrote a piece of code and then it just sort of like spit out the image. Every single thing was placed. So you see the like people there. I placed all of those people there. I placed all the banners and all the things and set up the lightings. You really have, with these 3D programs, complete control to do basically anything. And so to me, that's really exciting. But all of it is very, very intentional.
Yeah, exactly. Because I guess there's like 3D programs. Like I think there's one, I think it's maybe Houdini, where you can do like these kind of crowd scenes and you can kind of specify how something changes over time, and then it will just place all these things. I think it was probably used in like Lord of the Rings on those armies or that type of thing. But you clearly have like no interest in doing that. You're very like deliberate, right?
Well, even with that, that's not necessarily sort of like generative, because in like stuff like that, like crowd simulation programs, you are still controlling all of it, but you're choosing to let some of it be random versus like writing a program where the whole thing is random. That's just one piece of the scene where you're choosing to put some like randomness in it. And so it's definitely different than sort of like generative art. And this type of work really could only have been made in the last few years, maybe 15 years, 10, 15 years, because these programs didn't exist. Generative art is sort of what all art was before this, because if you wanted to make art on the computer, you had to write the code to make the art. It wasn't like there weren't these tools. And so here's a few more examples of the everydays. And so they've gotten much more, what's the word I'm looking for lately? The pictures have gotten much more sort of like political and much more sort of like about current events recently, but that's very new. That's really, and that's sort of what people know me for, but that's really just been the last, I would say, about 3-4 years that they've had that sort of like focus. But I think it's really exciting to be able to use these very advanced tools to make something that comments on the events of that day. And in that way, it's somewhat similar to like a political cartoonist, but instead of a sketch, I'm able to make an image that looks like this, a painting that could
kind
take
of like satire of it. Yeah.
Sure. That could take, weeks or months to like make. And so that has been, fairly new.
But can you also talk a little bit as we're going through these, your kind of influences? Because there's obviously a huge sci-fi aesthetic going on. I mean, we were talking a little bit past couple of days about maybe this kind of bombardment with like CGI in movies, like Marvel Marvel film studios doing all this kind of like chaos and whatever, I don't know, Thor, whatever, fighting, but also the design of movie posters, this idea of the lone figure in the middle, which you see this motif a lot.
Yep.
Just if you could talk a little bit about those influences.
Yeah, definitely. I would say science fiction is probably the biggest sort of influence. I grew up with Star Wars, and it's hard to sort of like overstate the influence that Star Wars has had on, myself and I guess all of science fiction. But it's definitely, I'm trying to, in many of the pictures, sort of take trends that are happening now and then sort of project that, maybe 50 or 100 years into the future to imagine what that sort of might end up like. And usually it's done with sort of like a satire, like kind of like a funny sort of like twist to it. But yeah, the science fiction is something that I think you will see. Honestly, I think you will see it a lot more in art as technology becomes a even bigger sort of like aspect in our lives. I think you'll see more people sort of like talking about and making work that deals with the effects of technology. Yeah,
especially, I don't know if you've got further slides that will talk about it, but this idea of machine learning and AI actually generated images now, it seems to make everything look super sci-fi, because it just kind of blends it into this kind of mushy, surrealist dream.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I never thought about that, but they do all feel very like techie feeling, even if you type in something that has nothing to do with that.
It's like the filter on it somehow.
Kind of robotic, which is interesting because they're obviously being generated by this, machine sort of like consciousness. So here's more sort of like recent everydays. During the coronavirus, there was a bunch of work, and the everydays are really a mix of sort of experimentation, and they're a mix of things that are going on in my life as well as things that are going on in like the entire sort of like world. So there's everydays from the day my daughter was born, and then there's everydays from when Trump got kicked off of Twitter, and so it's a pretty wide range there.
There's also a very concept art aesthetic to it as well.
Absolutely. That is another like huge influence is concept art. I would say that's probably the biggest influence over the last probably 5 years. I've got a lot of friends who work in, TV and video games and movies, and they use a lot of these same tools. And so seeing the like art and the sort of like craft and production behind these, finished pieces to me is really interesting and something that I very much have brought into the work quite a bit.
Do they teach you a lot about new tools that are coming out that are maybe, I don't know, super cutting edge that maybe normal people wouldn't have heard of?
Say it again.
Do you get like advice from them about potential new tools and kind of looks for things as well, and that feeds into your practice maybe?
A little bit. I think I try not to get too hung up on like rushing to the like new tool because there's constantly new tools coming out. I'm much more sort of like focused on how can I get really fast with just the tool that I have, which is already very, very powerful. If I was just using the program that I use now, I could use that for the rest of my life and still put out a lot of different things, because again, it's a program. The program has just unlimited possibilities because you control sort of like every aspect of it. And the process for making these everydays feels very, it combines a lot of different other sort of, it combines the fundamental sort of like ideas behind a lot of other different mediums too. When I start the picture, I start with sort of like a blank sort of like 3D space, and I have to build sort of geometry that is going to be the basis of the picture. And so in that way, that sort of part of the process, it feels very sculptural because I'm building up a sort of like shape.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like you've changed almost from being illustrator or draftsman to one that is literally pulling and shaping forms, actually extruding things and chiseling things away.
Yeah, and so in that part of the process, it feels very sort of sculptural. And then from there, I need to basically, you have a virtual camera, and from there I need to light and shoot the thing that I just built in this 3D space. And that way it feels kind of like photography, because I need to frame a composition around this 3D object.
And you did that too, right? You did 1 year of taking...
I did 1 year of that, which really helped in the like 3D process in terms of like framing and composition.
Some actually really good photos.
And then at the end of the process, it feels very sort of like painterly, because then I render the image and take it into Photoshop, and then you sort of paint on and composite the kind of like final details. So to me, there's a lot of different sort of like thought process going on, and this goes into each every day. And so I think this is something where this tool alone I could use for a very, very long time. So this kind of brings us to the sort of recent work that I've done. Human One is here at the museum here, and I want to thank Jehan and Ryan for everything they've done, and all of Ryan's team to get this here. It's definitely been such an amazing opportunity, and it looks so sweet in that room. I mean, it
does look pretty sweet.
And so this was... making physical works like this is something that is very, very new to my practice, and something that I think is kind of ironic. As the sort of traditional art world was going more digital, I started going more sort of like physical with the works. But I think you're going to continue to see the sort of blurring of these lines, and I think that's something that you see sort of across society. We're all now walking around with computers in our pockets. Like that's, that wasn't the case, obviously, 20 years ago. And so I think this sort of like blurring of the physical and digital worlds will definitely continue. And it'll be something where I think having a way to experience digital art in the real world, aside from just looking it on your phone, I think that is very important, and something that will show people, give people a much more emotional connection to this work in a way that you just can't when you're looking at something like, and there's text messages popping up, and like that's just kind of in some ways the worst way to like actually view art. And so we've sort of experimented with a number of different processes here in terms of the physicals that we've made.
How big was the team? Because I assume that you needed obviously technical help in order to make this. Was this a relatively small team, or did it require lots of different expertise?
So this came together Human One came together very fast, and it came together from sort of like conception to the finished work being sold in about 2.5 months. And I would say probably about a dozen people worked on it.
Super fast, actually. I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and it uses projection mapping, which is a technique that I learned from the concert visual work that I did. And so there is kind of just a little disclaimer here. There's sort of, if you stand right in front of it, that's where it sort of like looks best. I see a lot of times people kind of like walking all areas around it. So if you stand right in front, I think we might put a sticker on the floor.
Yeah, we will. Because it's like a 1 point perspective, right? Essentially, it's like
Yeah, it's sort of like taking and sort of like mimicking the virtual camera in the physical world. And so here's another couple different artworks that we made this year that are not actually publicly shown yet. So
You're showing them publicly
they
now.
are
There you
publicly
go.
shown. They actually are publicly shown now. And so another project that we've been busy with this last year is building out the studios in Charleston there. And so we've got a 50,000 square foot studio, and it kind of has three sort of like functions. It's where we built Human One, and so there's a bunch of sort of like offices and workshops, and then it also had a bunch of just blank factory space. And so in that blank factory space, we built a sort of more traditional white wall gallery. And to me, having a place like that where I can immediately show physical works is really something that I very badly wanted, because I've been used to being able to sort of put out work without any sort of, I didn't need anybody's permission to put out work. I could just make something, I post it online, and boom, it's distributed to everybody. So having a physical space like that, where I didn't have to wait for a gallery or wait for a museum show, like it's great to be able to like have that physical space to show work like that.
Can you talk a little bit maybe about, it looks like there's some paintings there, right? I don't know if the public know this.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing with the Everydays is getting some of them made into like paintings and like prints. And to me, again, this is really about what is the way to take the ideas inherent in the image and convey them to people. And I think sometimes that's a painting, sometimes that's a print. And so trying to figure out how to manifest these ideas in the real world is something that has been really interesting and challenging as well. And I think to me, that's what's really exciting about sort of like digital art, is that because it does not have any inherent physical form, it's almost like the core, like a pure like conceptual sort of like artwork. But it allows you to, it can also take these different sort of like forms, which I think is really exciting, and figuring out which is the best one to sort of like make the idea stronger has been really interesting.
Do you think you're becoming like a director, as in like a movie director, that kind of thinking? Or are you still very much like, I want to make everything myself?
Yeah, I'm a big control freak. So there's definitely, again, we very much have a team and sort of like people, but I definitely am pretty hands-on here. And the Everydays obviously are also done just completely by me solo each day. So I still do quite a bit of sort of like hands-on work, but it is great being able to have a team that can realize these bigger projects. The other side of the in the studio there is this sort of like experiential space in which we have all of the sort of screens. All of the walls are wrapped with screens or projectors, and we've got a bunch of sort of like columns of screens. And to me, this is really exciting to have a space like this where we can show other people's work and really sort of like bring the digital art community and bring in people and show them that this stuff has a lot more sort of like emotional impact when it's viewed in a sort of proper way.
I guess that's why we're looking at our donors wall so much yesterday.
What's it? Oh yeah.
When we're looking at the screens, because these are projected instead, right?
Yeah, and so this space will open next year. And that's all.
Can I just ask about that space too? Did you mention if you were predominantly showing your work, or will you be using it to highlight lots of other digital artists and giving them the opportunity too for having this? It will
definitely be something where we're going to be bringing. I'm basically going to post the sort of like pixel map, the template of the space. And kind of if somebody sends me a cool video, like we're going to show that. And so it's going to be much more sort of lower lift in terms of like programming and sort of like curating this stuff. And to me, that's really exciting because I think there's an opportunity to use a space like this almost as like a platform, almost as sort of like a physical version of Instagram, where we're much sort of more like hands off on what's being kind of like shown at it. And so to me, I think there's a lot of interesting things that can come out of that. And I think it's very much a space where we're trying to experiment and sort of like, I don't know. I don't know exactly where that's going to go. And to me, that's really exciting.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. I'm just seeing if oh yeah, great. The QR code is up. So if anyone has any burning questions, you can scan this QR code up here, and it will take you to an app called Slido, and then you can type in your questions. It'll appear on our screen here, and then we'll try to get through as many of them as possible. So whilst we're waiting for a few to come up, actually, perhaps I'll just start with a question. Actually, a nice question which we spoke to the press and media viewer actually yesterday, but it'd be nice for the public here to hear about. But this idea of Human One being a sculptural work, I very much consider it sculptural work, but of course it has this element of a dynamic NFT, which is something that changes over time, which is a new possibility for a sculptural work. But I think the question is more about the sort of changing relationship between the artist and the collector, actually. And we were talking yesterday about this idea of trust and kind of like responsibility as well, and what your view on that is.
Yeah, I think what makes Human One very different from any of the other sort of like artwork in the museum is this is a artwork that's going to continue to change over the rest of my life. And it's not changing in a sort of like generated way where I don't know how it's going to change. It's changing in a very manual way where I am like changing it, like I changed it specifically for this this exhibition. And so in that way, I feel like it's really more of like an ongoing conversation than sort of like a finite statement frozen in time. And I think that's really exciting because I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know exactly, what I'm going to update it to. An example of that was when the piece first sold, it was sort of these deserts and sort of the person was walking through these deserts and sort of some rocks and it had a bunch of art historical references from melting clocks to Giacometti statues walking. And then for the first exhibition at Castello di Rivoli, it changed to an image of the Ukraine war. And that's something that I couldn't have sort of like predicted, and the collector could not have predicted when he bought the piece. And so to me, that really does open up a new sort of like relationship where there is this level of trust that I'm going to continue to sort of, change this in ways that add beauty and sort of challenge him and challenge everybody. And I think that's something that is really exciting and something that speaks to the true potential of digital art in a way that we've not really seen in the past. Most of the NFTs that you see are just sort of like static images, and they're really more like, it's a certificate of sort of ownership, versus this being this dynamic work that I think you will see more of in the future.
Yeah, because it brings like really interesting questions about, beliefs, or like if the owner has the right to ask you to change it, or like they just, could he request a specific thing of the work? Or is it just a suggestion you go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he could certainly request it.
Maybe we'll go into a question here. What does Beeple stand for? I don't know if that means.
What does Beeple stand for? So Beeple it's actually, I'm named after this little sort of like toy from the 80s. It's kind of a little sort of like Ewok looking thing that it kind of, when you cover its eyes, it sort of like lights up and kind of like giggles. And that's something that is this sort of like interplay between light and sound. That was, again, with the instrumental videos, a very big focus of the early work that I did. I also think it sounds kind of like computery, like beep boop.
So you stand for beep boop. Can you talk a little bit about some of the updates actually on Human One for this situation? I mean, the pluses. Can you talk a little bit about?
That is funny. So there's actually, if you look at the video in the beginning of it, there's these sort of like pluses, and I didn't literally make the connection to M plus until like last night. Somebody said that, and it's like, oh yeah, that's like it seems very. There's also these like shiny black spheres that look exactly like Kusama spheres that I also did not make that connection. Those were happy little accidents. But for the current iteration of it, I wanted to make something that was sort of a reflection of this sort of like first sort of like journey to Asia. And I wanted to make something that felt like it was going into a foreign land and had a lot of vibrant, colorful imagery. And then towards the end of it, those spheres kind of explode, and that I wanted to sort of symbolize fireworks in a way. And so it's really fun to me to be able to sort of have this work feel fresh every time it's shown, because it is a new work that, I've made.
Sorry, I'm just trying to collate a few, because there's quite a few similar questions about AI. I mean, we've answered a little bit about it, but there's one question which is kind of related to, like DALL-E 2 or Midjourney. And with all the recent AI artwork, has provided more tools for an everyday person to make that art. How does this affect, how does it affect artists making digital artwork? And maybe with the Midjourney one, kind of similar, but what do you think about this future of like kind of AI and human?
Sure. I think the AI, for those who don't know, there's a number of sort of like programs that have come out over the last few months where you basically can just type in a few words and they will generate an image that is pretty good. They're getting pretty crazy. And I think it's going to have a pretty disruptive effect on sort of digital art production, from sort of video games to TV and movies. And I think you're seeing this across a lot of different things. You're seeing now there's this chat GPT that generates pretty crazy text. And I think
pass exams, I was reading somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's getting pretty insane. And I think this is not sort of like new. New tools have come out since the beginning of time. And I think it's really going to be about how artists embrace those new tools. And I think this is very, very powerful, probably the most powerful sort of new tool that I've seen in the 20 years making digital art. But again, I think it's something where everybody has access to this new tool. And so I think it will kind of level the playing field in a way. I think it will be similar to digital cameras. In digital cameras, I'm sure there were a lot of people who argued or were very worried that this was going to ruin photography. Now everybody can be a photographer. It's like, well, and it didn't. And so I think this is not something this has happened before. And I think people will adjust and they will be able to sort of use this tool in their workflow to work quicker and make images that are the images in their head at sort of like a higher fidelity.
I wonder if there's this question for me actually, but this kind of like feedback loop that will happen, because you're grabbing images from the internet to make these images, and then resupplying them onto the internet as these kinds of like surrealistic, dreamy images that then get fed back into it? Will we eventually just get like
A gray
a
mush.
gray mush? Yeah.
I would say possibly. I think that's definitely interesting. And I think there are a lot of debates right now around the ethics of how they're sort of like sourcing these images. And I think that's really good because this technology is not going away. So I think finding ways to sort of make sure this is not taking a bunch of images and sort of like very closely replicating some of them to the point where it's kind of breaking copyright possibly. I think that's something that people are going to really need to like sort out because it's such a powerful tool. It's definitely not going anywhere.
Yeah. Here's something about the metaverse. So what are your views on the application of art within the metaverse, and which of these possibilities excite you the most?
I think that the metaverse is a bit of a loaded term. I think it's become mostly marketing jargon at this point, and I think it's got a long ways before people are going to spend a significant amount of time there. I think it will definitely eventually get there, but I think there's a lot of sort of the experience needs to get a lot more sort of like compelling. But
hang on, aren't people doing that already on these like massive multiplayer online games, right? So like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really play them so much now, but like in the past, it would have been like World of Warcraft or something like that.
Sure.
And then now there's Fortnite and things like that. And people spend, and especially kids spend an inordinate amount of time on these worlds already. So,
Absolutely.
So
Roblox.
Isn't it a kind of like the metaverse is kind of here? Why would we build a different one?
I think, it really depends on your definition of the metaverse.
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
some people because there is no actual sort of like hard definition of it. Some people do consider that. Some people consider Discord the metaverse. Some people consider Twitter the metaverse. And it's sort of like, to me, it's not really the metaverse until my mom is in it, till your grandma's in it. Like that to me is like the metaverse. And I think it will be I personally think the first sort of like real thing that we will come to know as the metaverse is with AR, when we have AR goggles on and everybody has them on and they're as ubiquitous as smartphones are now. I think that will, and we're all sort of interacting with these virtual objects that are not there. I think that's what we'll come to know as the metaverse.
Oh, you mean when kind of like Google Glass, but not,
I think it will probably be Apple, actually. I think Apple's probably the only company cool enough to get you to strap a computer to
I
your
was like,
face.
do you know something already?
Oh, they're definitely working on it 100%. Like, yeah, they've been working for years.
Okay. And here's actually a nice question. Do you miss Wisconsin? And do you feel being brought up there added to your creativity?
Do I miss Wisconsin? No. I miss my like friends and family back there, but I mean, I guess I don't have any family back there, but I miss people back there. But do I miss Wisconsin itself? Definitely not. It's very cold. There's nothing to do. It's very boring. Yeah, that's it. I mean, you don't even need to visit Wisconsin. I just basically took everybody to Wisconsin right there verbally. Yeah, no, we'll be in Charleston for a second here with especially with the studio.
Okay. Someone obviously wants to take it further with you. On the daily art, around how many hours do you spend on each piece? Both in the very beginning, you have started with 3D softwares whilst you had a job, and now. Okay, so yeah, how much? Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I would say the everydays on average are around 2 hours, and this really sort of like goes up and down, can vary kind of like quite a bit based on sort of what's going on that day. Sometimes if I have an idea for something that I'm like, oh, this could be really good, then I'll sort of kind of tuck that idea away and wait till I've got a day where I can spend like 5 or 6 hours on it, because I just certain ideas I know will take much more time to kind of like actually realize. Conversely, if there's a day where I'm super, super busy, then, it could happen in a half hour. But I think the key to sort of the everydays is, and this is something that I've sort of encouraged people to do and talks all over the world. If you want to do an everydays project, I think one of the biggest keys is to make sure it's something you could do in 5 minutes. If you couldn't do it in 5 minutes, there's no excuse. There's no way you can lie to yourself and be like, I got too busy or XYZ happening. No. 5 minutes. You had 5 minutes that day, I promise you. And so it really is, about sort of like keeping that momentum and just incrementally improving and not sort of like, I'm going to, killing yourself and then getting burned out. It's really about how can you do a lot of work over a long period of time without sort of like burning out.
It's very similar to that. I played the piano when I was a kid, but it was the advice that was always given by the piano tutor was, it's better for you to just practice 10 minutes a day doing some scales than like not doing anything all week and then at the end of
2
the week
hours.
doing 2 hours, because you just have to relearn everything essentially. You don't get that kind of muscle memory.
Yeah, and it's very much that's what I'm trying to build with the Cinema 4D and sort of like keeping the same sort of like workflow is I'm trying to work as quickly as possible so the technology sort of like gets out of the way and it is more like a painter and I'm able to sort of just have this kind of like flow, and doing it every single day I think is very sort of key to building that.
Yeah, and I guess that's why you're using stock imagery as well now predominantly, because it just speeds up that workflow.
Yep.
So the concept is the main thing.
100%. And the faster you're able to work, I think the faster you're able to sort of it be a bit more impulsive, I guess.
Okay, can you make an everyday of Hong Kong, please? You've already done that. You made an everyday the other day of Quarry Bay, right?
I've done a couple pieces that were inspired by Hong Kong here. I think to me it's such a like visually rich, and I just love the like complexity of everything here. It's just there's so much inspiration here for me.
What's your ultimate goal?
What's your ultimate goal? Okay, well that's an interesting question. Make good art. I don't know. Yeah.
It's been 15 years plus. You're aiming for another 20 years of doing art a day. Basically,
no.
Is it going to end? I guess somebody's asking.
I'm not aiming for another 20 years. I'm aiming for another 50 years.
50 years.
No, I don't know. It's not something I'm going to stop. Hopefully we'll be doing it till the day I die. And it's something where I feel like we've gone this far. You got to just see it through.
I've shamelessly downloaded and used, I guess, your VJ loops many times. It's great to thank you in person. Any chance you'd ever experiment with much newer software? I guess Cinema 4D is still new. It keeps getting upgraded, right?
Yeah, it's definitely these programs keep sort of like upgrading, and there's other like little programs that I use to kind of like help with the workflow as well. Whether it be sort of like motion capture stuff or there's a bunch of new sort of simulation stuff, things that can simulate fire and simulate smoke. There's always coming out with new things, but I try not to change the workflow too much, because every time you do that, you completely kill all that sort of like muscle memory. The big thing I'm going to have to switch to, and I keep putting it off, is Unreal. And that's Unreal Engine is a game engine that is it's over the last sort of 3 years, it's gotten extremely, extremely powerful and can render very, very fast. And I just haven't made that leap yet, but
yeah, I've seen it. It looks really impressive, like some really photorealistic rendering going on in there. And actually, maybe you should say, do you use PC or Mac?
I use PC. I went to school for computer science, obviously, and so I really cannot do almost anything on a Mac. You would be shocked. It's really bad. It's embarrassing.
What's your favorite film? What's your favorite film that you like to fall back on a good day? Or maybe like, what films have like influenced maybe the look of your work?
Yeah, I think a lot of sort of like recent sci-fi films have Dune. I thought looked amazing and was super super influential. Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell. Trying to think what else.
Just generally, I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but maybe like this kind of Marvel sort of look as well, right? That kind of chaotic, this huge like looming threats type look. It seems to be, yeah, in your work.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where I'll sort of make something that does kind of look like a movie poster, and sort of like I'll take like a little person and sort of have a big gigantic object that they're looking at. And to me, that's a way to sort of like show the kind of like scale, and also a way to, I feel like when you see that little person, you kind of put yourself into the like eyes of that person, and you can kind of imagine what it would look like if you were the one sort of like looking at this massive object. So yeah, that is definitely, I think, another inspiration that I kind of draw on a lot.
Are you influenced much by art history? So I know that you're steadily going through and learning, things about painting from the past. Are you consciously trying to think more about those references?
I think prior to the whole NFT craze, I was influenced by art history, but it was much more unconscious because I actually knew nothing of art history. Again, not going to sort of like art school. But since then, I've learned quite a lot. I still definitely, there's much more to learn, but I've learned quite a lot. And to me, it's much more, it's really, I see like a full kind of like continuity line here. Before it felt kind of irrelevant to what I was doing. It was sort of like, that doesn't have anything to do with sort of like digital art. And now that these two worlds have merged, it just, I can see a lot more of what I've done kind of, in the past, and sort of things that I took for granted. It's like, oh, that's why we do this, or that's why, this kind of thing works or doesn't work, is because of, art history that I just wasn't even aware of.
Yeah, I mean, when we were walking around SIG Gallery recently. Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to collect. There's lots asking for photos and things like that.
Here's a good question. What's up with that microphone head? I think it's just.
I know, I'm trying to filter some of those ones, but okay, this is interesting. When creating a digital art, well, I think you've answered that a little bit. When creating a digital artwork, what affects your choice of digital formats? E.g., what subject matter would go to NFT, or when would you use generative art?
Wait, say it again.
When creating a digital artwork, what affects your choice of digital formats? I thought it's asking something else at first.
I mean, most of them are sort of regular JPEGs, I guess.
Yeah.
So I usually run out of time. It doesn't, I don't have a bunch of time to sort of like, oh, do I like this? Do I not like this? Every day has to be finished and posted by midnight each day. And so I usually just run out of time. And usually, almost always, it's like, oh, if I would have done this. And so that's something that also is very tough, because I don't get to sort of fully, pick at it and sort of come back to it and think about it. I usually just sit down and do it at the end of the night and kind of in one shot, do it from start to finish. So there isn't a lot of like reflection. But yeah, I just run out of time.
This is a nice question. They're all anonymous, I guess. But who do you consider your main audience today?
I consider everybody my main audience, I guess, because I'm putting these works out into the world and into the public. I really kind of consider everybody the audience. I'm not trying to talk to one sort of like specific group of people. I'm trying to make work that kind of anybody could sort of take something from. And sometimes there's things that are more specifically targeted towards, the United States, I guess, politically. But most of the work I'm trying to make sort of very broad that anybody can sort of like take something from it.
And lots of humor. Yeah. Yeah, this is one about, I mean, obviously there's been lots of stuff going on about NFTs. And maybe nowadays when we think about NFTs, we kind of think about, I guess, cryptocurrency more, right? And this idea of speculation and like, changing, fluctuating prices, like market changes. What do you think about that? I guess what it's trying to ask is this kind of link between like
crypto and digital art. I think that is a very temporary sort of like link where people think about digital art or NFTs and they immediately think of Bitcoin. What's the price of Bitcoin? I think as people come to understand this as just another artistic medium, you will see that sort of like fade away. But I think it will take a sec. I think part of the reason that you see a lot of people focus on that too is it's much easier to talk about money and numbers than it is to talk about art. Talking about art and the ideas behind art, that's hard. That's messy. That's subjective. Talking about this is the price of XYZ, that's easy. Anybody can do that.
Yeah, just like quantifying. Yeah. As a digital artist, your interest in fusing the physical and digital spaces suggests that you believe in creating social interactions through art. Do you believe that's correct?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of sort of social interactions that the art brings about because I am putting it out and people can immediately comment on it. And I think that's something that's really exciting and something that's obviously very new to the last, 10 years or so. And to me, that is something that opens up this kind of like dialogue that between the audience and myself in a way that I think I don't think has really existed before. And it can sometimes affect the work. And sometimes people will say something and then the next every day it will be, I will sort of either take their suggestion or, comment on what people were saying about the last work. So to me, that's really exciting and something that I think you will see more of in the future.
Have you made anything I can't think of anything that's been interactive that you've ever made. Because you talked earlier about wanting originally to make video games, right? But I don't know if that's you just wanted to make video game graphics or if you wanted this like control aspect. And if you haven't, would you want to?
I don't really have a huge interest in making a video game just because it's
I mean a video, just something that's like an
interactive. Yeah, I actually have a lot of interest in making something that's like more interactive. I've not done that yet, but I think that's something again with the NFTs that I think it brings up that possibility that I think there's a lot of room to explore there and ways to sort of give the collector, give the viewer some sort of like agency over how the work looks or how the work behaves. I think there's a lot that can be done there that is very exciting.
Do you dream about your everydays or in the style of your everydays?
I don't dream about them, but I do have actually a recurring nightmare about missing my everyday. And it's definitely something that I take very seriously. And something that if I do miss a day, and there was a a thing earlier this year. I don't want to get into it, but it's something where this is a huge part of my life, that it's sort of like it's been a very quantifiable portion of my life making these every days. And so I take missing them or not missing them very seriously. But I don't really like dream up, like kind of like have a dream and then, sort of like make that.
Painting a surrealistic fantasy.
No, it's more like it's pretty sort of like intentionally kind of like thought out.
Okay, I think that's the end of our sort of questions. So I'd just like to mention, actually, is it up there? I can't see it. Okay, great. Our next talk, which is in conversation with Alvaro Catalán de Oson, with Iko Yokoyama, our lead curator of design and architecture. That's happening on the 14th of December, and it'll take place 7 to 8:30. So after the talk, participants may join a tour led by Iko to the East Galleries to see the pet lamp display. So if anyone's interested in registering, you've got a couple of seconds to register now, but otherwise you can always visit our website and get that QR code from there. And can we go to the next slide? Great. I would just want to also thank everybody for showing up today to this talk. We have, a great crowd, pretty much a full house. And I'd like to thank the Robert Ho Foundation in Hong Kong, who sponsored this series of talks. And please also give us your feedback by taking this 1-minute survey, if possible, by scanning this QR code. We'd be hugely grateful because it enables us to improve or think about ways of making our talks even better. So please return your SI headsets to our staff as you leave, and the main exit is at the bottom of the grand stair. So it just leaves me to basically thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Round of applause.